Welcome back to another episode of jewelry repair using the micro welder. I hope you enjoy this. Today we are going to turn these vintage clip-on earrings into pierced ear earrings with hooks. First, I'm going to say that this kind of setting with brass, they're pre-stamped and then the prongs are folded over. Actually, the setting is very thin and it's exactly the same thickness as you see the prongs because they're stamped. So if you are ever going to weld something onto this, be careful not to use very high heat, because in the past what I've done is I put it so high and melted through because this is so fine. It's actually quite thin. Luckily, a couple of things. Luckily, this has a bit of casting. They've added metal here for the soldering of this clip. The other thing is, while this old earring was worn this way, and it was the thing back then, in fact, I think it's a lot more flattering if it was hung this way and it tapers down. The owner of these earrings agreed and felt that it was more flattering if the hook was up here. So that makes my job a lot easier. And what we're going to do is remove this. Perhaps we'll have to shave it down a little bit. And then we're going to weld a jump ring onto the reinforced area and then add a hook. Let's get started. First, what I'm going to do is remove this while taking not a lot off. And I'm using heavy screw cutters as opposed to my fine wire cutters, because while this might be not too thick, it's quite strong and you don't want to damage expensive cutters. Then I take a look and I'm going to trim off excess that I'm not going to weld onto. And what we're going to do is I'm then going to file it down. So this is the result. I'm going to file it down, and I like that there is extra metal here for reinforcement, and we're going to weld onto this piece. And then I'm going to do the same thing on both sides. This. And we trim a little bit more so that I have less to have to file down. So these are the metal files that I'm going to use. They're inexpensive and you can get something similar. This is diamond grit. There are ones where it's really heavy. You don't need such heavy grit because you're not taking off a lot and it is actually more of a delicate process. So I don't want it to be sharp. It's actually easier if my hand was resting and then only one side is moving. But for filming, this is probably the easiest way. Actually, whoever made these earrings, there was quite a bit of solder. I don't know what happened here. That piece. Okay, there. And they're not going to see it anyway, so you don't have to grind it all down. And in fact, we do want the support, so I don't want to take it all off. That's good. And then we're going to do the same thing on this other side. see, I don't want to hit this by accident, so I'm going to put my finger there, the guide, and it's not so rough that it is hurting my fingers, but you know, not something for really delicate hands. So now I want to decide, do I want 5mm or 6 or whatever size? We basically want to, here's the reinforced area, we want it here, about there, and then we're going to take a look to the side. I don't want this earring to be too low because it'll, depending on the person's piercing, this might stand above the earlobe. So the earlobe might be like this, and I don't necessarily want it to be over the earlobe because the person might have lucky fatty earlobes, nice cushy ones that it'll push. So I want it to hang so that the jump ring is just above the clearing like this. So I might end up having to go with 6mm so that it'll be just at par. So either 5 or 6, and this is how you want to see it. And then once you put it here this way, you want to see what it'll look like this way. So in the end, I decided on 6mm, 20 gauge. These are quite thick. But because these earrings are chunky, if it was fine, be a little bit off balance. And what I like is, if I put it here where there's a lot more metal, and if need be, I can melt some wire as solder because this one left a little pit. And if I want to do that and I want more support surface area, I want it down here, and I want to make sure that it is not too low. You see, that's a good position. So that's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to weld this closed and then weld onto that. Now that I'm doing this, I realize the two of them are not the same. This is all soldered, and when I lay it down, the angle is not the same, and I don't have as much room on this one as this one. So the one that has more constraint, I'm going to weld on that first, and maybe it will end up being lower, so that I'll weld the one that has less room, and then the one I have more leeway in deciding I'm going to do it so as to match this one. Maybe you can see it more clearly here. Whoever soldered this is further closer into here than this one. So there is not enough room, and what I'm going to end up doing, I want it as centered onto this as possible so that it won't be very wonky, and it'll hang a little bit better if it was more centered. So because there's not enough room, you see, if I was to weld it here, it's going to be on this side a bit more. What I'm going to do is I'm going to weld this and then press it down to be more oblong so that there isn't as much room. It doesn't have to shift this way, and it'll be centered, and then we can hang it better. Okay, so I'm going to weld, and then I'm going to press down like this to make it a little bit more oval. I'm going to do it for both of them. Now you see, now I can put it in closer like this, and so I have more surface area around here to weld onto this. Okay, now I'm going to weld this jump ring. And I'm going to do both, a couple of sides, because this is 20 gauge. Both jump rings are even, so they're going to be the same length. I want to show you how to determine this. I'm trying to figure out the space, and then I'm going to figure out the height, make sure that I want it to be even. And I want to remember where it is, so that the next one, which has a bit more room on this side, I'm going to move it so that it's around the same area. And when you do that, you have to look at various angles, tack weld, and check again before going further. That way you're not having to do a whole lot, only to discover that one is significantly different than the other. The other thing about hanging in center of gravity is when something is very heavy and the hook is at the back, then the gravitational pull dictates that this will fall forward. So in fact, because all the weight is in the front. So in fact, it would have been ideal if the hook was right here, positioned right here, welded that way. In that case, it would hang straight as opposed to tipping forward. And it doesn't happen with clip-ons because it's not hanging freely and it's being pressed against the flesh. So clip-ons are a lot more secure. It's not free swinging. When you are having swinging earrings, just keep that in mind. So in fact, oftentimes what I do is I would have something longer, weld it or solder it here, and then bend it forward ever so slightly. Bend this towards the center, and then when it's on the hook, it stands up more like this. So I am measuring, you see, and I'm going to try to get it as close as possible to where I want, to the center. And I'm going to tack weld on the outside first. That's the easiest. This is my tack weld. I'm going to have the hook right here. It's pretty good. It's somewhat even, you see. And I definitely do not want this lower. I've had problems before where the earlobe is touching because the hook they decide on is short. So I'm liking that. And then what I'm going to do is weld all around here and inside. Okay, I'm going to try to film it this way so you can see. So all I'm doing, well, there's quite a bit of smoke. I'm going to clean it, but what I'm doing now is creating the bond between the cast and the jump ring. And I'm going to go all the way around it and on the inside. Let's see if you can see without my shadow, the reflection coming through. There. And I'm trying to melt some of the jump ring. So touching both. And because there's a crevice here, what I might end up doing is if there's too much of a hole because the casting is irregular, what I'm going to do is maybe put some wire there and then melt it all down for reinforcement. You see? Hey, if you're enjoying this, give me a thumbs up now and subscribe so you don't miss my upcoming projects. Basically, I've put the electrode like this, melting this with the casting like this, all the way around. But because you see here, there's a hole, I wish there was more reinforcement. I might end up, if I find that thereafter it's not strong enough and I want some cushion here, because you can't see it from this end anyway, but this is irregular, what I'm going to do is put some wire in there and melt it. So, because there's a lot of soot, and this is old and kind of greasy, you want to clean it, and argon would have really helped also. Okay, so let's do this. Why did I put so much rapid fire melting? The reason is because this is thick, the jump ring, and when I do this, when you point at the jump ring, it will lower it a little bit, and you point at it again. What basically is happening is the jump ring flattens out, and you keep melting it, and you do it this side. It fuses the ends together as opposed to having a very thick piece of metal, and you're welding here. Basically, I'm flattening it all out to have more surface area and then welding all of it. So this is what it looks like from the front, and I'm really liking it. It is a good spot. And then what we're going to do is add the leverback, and then I'm going to weld over there, and it's going to hang like this. So earlobe, and here are the finished earrings. I hope you enjoyed that. Stones and Findings is a wholesaler of premium quality chains and findings. I'm going to leave more information below about our company, and what you have seen in this video.